Good to go. Okay, cool. Session of the Forest Grove City Council. The topic is the topic is on our LOC priorities. There's no public comment will be taken. The council will take no formal action. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, I'll try to keep my staff report brief so that council could reach consensus on the city's top 5 legislative priorities. But a little bit of background, the city is a member of the League of Oregon Cities, and the League of Oregon Cities every even-numbered year appoints policy committees to go over various policy proposals that they will in turn advocate for down in Salem during the 27-28 legislative cycle. As part of that process, they ask each of their members, of which we are one, to come up with their top 5 priorities. Once we come up with our top 5 priorities, along with all of their other members, we submit those priorities to the League of Oregon Cities. Those votes are then tallied at the League of Oregon City level, and the LOC Board of Directors will review all of those votes and the top 5 priorities for the League of Oregon Cities by September 25th, and then that will become essentially the League of Oregon Cities policy agenda or advocacy agenda for the upcoming legislative session. So with that, I did submit the what is called the LOC member voter guide, which has, I think, 27 different legislative policy priorities that came from all the various committees within LOC. I submitted that to all the department directors, and we did a little bit of internal polling, and the results that came back from city staff, which are certainly just city staff's opinion, are on the memo that was submitted to the city council. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Once council reaches consensus, then as the city manager, I will submit to the League of Oregon Cities on a ballot what the top 5 priorities are, and then it gets certified by LOC. So with that, unless there's any questions, that's my report, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jesse. So let's go over the process for how we're going to do this. I would like to thank Jesse for sending this out in advance so we had a chance to look at it, I think, a couple weeks in advance, not just with the normal packet. What I was thinking we could do is maybe, I probably should wait to eat. Maybe we'll go through and say what our priorities are, and I'll just tally them, and we'll start the discussion there. And then if there's some that are on the bubble or, competing, then we can make our case. Does that sound like an okay plan of attack? Okay, Councilor Schimmel, do you mind if I start with you?
Sure. Well, I had selected, say, 7 or 8 to see where the staff guidance was, and all 5 of theirs were in that group. So I will concede to staff's recommendations on those 5.
Okay, so one councilor's saying agreeing with staff, and I think staff's was transportation package, infrastructure, land availability, public meeting laws. What was their 5th one?
Support municipal cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. Okay, great. I'm just going to say staff rec 1. Okay, and then Councilor Falconer, are you good to?
My top 5 were 2 from the housing, full funding and streamlining for production, housing, land availability and land use, water and wastewater infrastructure, 2027 transportation, and public meetings law.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Martinez?
Yeah, I felt that there's the recommendations by staff were sufficient.
Okay. Okay, and same with Councilor Marshall. So what I had put on mine is similar to staff and similar to Councilor Falconer's. I had transportation package, infrastructure funding, land availability and land use streaming, public meeting laws, clarity, and full funding and streamlining for housing production. And then the one that I put on there that I was curious about, and I'm not going to die on the sword, but is the alcohol revenue modernization. I think that plays into, our work with public safety. We need to figure out some revenue, but then also in the state, my understanding is the state of Oregon is behind on that. And if you look at our responses to people experiencing homelessness, I just thought that would be interesting. So I just that was on my list, but I'm by no means married to that. We get 5, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. Wait, no, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. Okay, so the one I'm just going to be pretty candid and blunt. That's been my MO today. But the cyber security, I guess I would like more information from staff because I personally think the full funding and streamlining for housing production was not on staff's list. But then if you look at our 2040 action plan and then working with, if we're going to do land availability and land use streaming, and what I've been advocating for from the MMC is really like this, and the infrastructure funding, like all of these things are to me a package. And so I think those are the most important. And so I guess I'm just curious as to how staff sees it and, what guidance you can give us.
So good question. Thank you, Mayor. The one thing I will say about the 5th priority, support municipal cybersecurity proficiency, was when we got all the results back, we just tallied, which one had the most votes per se. The top 4 all had 3 or more votes, and then there was one, I believe, that had 2, which was number 5. And then there was a really, really long list of ones that had 1 vote, essentially. And so I know that's not answering the question as to exactly why staff did, but I just wanted to let you know in terms of kind of the priority ranking, so to speak, it was very, very close because we had a lot that were ranked at 1 that was ranked at 2, and the rest were ranked at 3 or higher, just to give you a little bit more context. I was not able to have follow-up meetings as to why directors chose this particular one versus another one. But hopefully that gives you a little more context.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Schimmel.
If I can maybe ask the question a different way, I mean, what do we stand to lose if we were to swap out the support municipal cybersecurity? What the relevance, or how does that solve the cities versus, say, the housing line item?
Well, I think staff just offers these for just information. I don't think there would be anything to lose per se. I think it would be, this is the discretion of the council, and whatever top 5 you'd like is what we'll submit. So, yeah.
Councilor Faulkner,
Yeah.
and then Councilor
Oh,
Martinez.
I'm sorry. I thought you were looking at.
No, I was looking at you and then her.
To me, I think we all agree that, cybersecurity is important. This goal here just feels a little vague to me. And it's not I'm not even really clear about, kind of what LOC is really advocating for on this one. I'm certain that the full funding, the 2 housing ones, those are definitely going to be important, I think. And they're definitely important to the city for our own timeline of where we are, where we're falling on our housing capacity,
Yes.
housing needs, assessment. Like that has to be that we're kicking that off this week. And then that immediately is followed by housing production strategy. And so I think that, putting our voice behind those 2 are really important because they match our goals, match our objectives, also our obligations. And I'm pretty sure that these are the ones that are going to move forward. I'm just not entirely clear on what the cybersecurity one is. And so I don't want to call it wasting a vote. I just think maybe our vote is a little bit more impactful on those others. On that.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez.
In my opinion, that the cybersecurity is very important because of what's going on in our world so far with AI. Other countries hacking systems. I don't think that that's something that we should set aside. And it's really is something that needs to be addressed. And we need that backing of the state to do that as a small community.
Yeah, I think we're like, I feel as the facilitator a little bit in a pickle because we have 2 members missing, and then the consensus is 3-2. It's not.
This has to be clarified today. Like we can't get our opinion in there and then get it, because I'm on the fence. Like the alcohol revenue monetization was also one that I looked at, but these were also on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that one hasn't, like it says on there, it hasn't been changed since 78.
Right.
Like it's been quite some time to kind of just take a look at it and see if it needs to change. And so I don't know if that's what they're looking at on this. So when does this need to be completed?
I think it's September 15th or sometime in the middle of September, I believe. I'm not.
Yeah, the deadline for submittal is September 25th, and so there is another council meeting in between now and then. Just a little bit of clarification. If a city submits, their top 5, it doesn't mean that the other ones aren't important. It doesn't mean that LOC won't advocate and won't respond because those positions are already set. Those were come up by the committees. This is really just prioritizing out of the 27, which ones that they will kind of advocate for and step out on, if you will. But it doesn't mean that they won't be responsive or even potentially, advocate to submit legislation on some of the other ones. It just means that this will be their top 5 priorities. And I would also add that I think we're one of 150 some cities that are part of LOC, so we get the same vote as any other city that's a member. There's not a prioritization of votes within LOC, so we're all kind of voting on the same platform, so to speak. So just a couple other contexts. But yes, we do have some time. There have been some cities that have submitted already. There's others most cities are kind of considering this in July, August, certainly before September, to get our vote in.
Counselor Faulkner.
I know we don't have two of our counselors. Did they provide you feedback before the meeting?
No.
Okay.
Here's, I guess, my follow-up question to the council. If we think that individually we're going to reach out to and dig into these and try to do some homework, then I'm okay adding this to an agenda item in the future. However, if we're not going to do any additional research, I think we should try to come to some sort of decision today. You know what I mean? I do think it is, there are other cities. What I'm hearing at the MMC level, in my groups is I did not hear cybersecurity come up. I mean, in the state, what's on the horizon for the state. And so I think for me, sometimes it's just really important, especially for small communities like Forest Grove, to push up those things that will have a significant effect on our community. And that, to me, that's infrastructure funding, right? That's all this housing production, this could really move and our community members could see it. They could feel the result of this legislation. And I do think cybersecurity is important. I think my hesitancy to not put it as a top priority is that I'm curious as to what our state legislature is actually going to get out of it. What product, I want to reword that. What product we're going to receive from this work. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's kind of Counselor Schimmel.
Well, I'm persuaded to change from the cybersecurity to the housing production for the 5th one.
Well, let me go back to my first question. Does anyone want more time to think about this and to reach out and research, or are we prepared to make a decision or come to consensus today? I'm prepared for today.
I'm okay with today. I mean, I'm with the understanding that, we're going to establish council priorities going into the legislative session and how we're going to advocate directly. So these may reveal themselves over the course of 6-7 months versus a few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Counselor Faulkner.
I don't think that this precludes us from advocating for any kind of cyber. Of course not, right? I mean, we could always decide that if there is a bill that we think that the state is going to step up and actually help, communities deal with cybersecurity risk, then we can certainly advocate for that. I don't think that these two things are exclusive.
As our city manager also expressed, that we're one of 150, so they could bring that up as well.
Right. Okay, so do we have consensus on, we had consensus on the 4. Is the 5th one to go with full funding and streamline housing production, or is there thumbs up for that? Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Counselor Marshall,
For replacing the,
the cybersecurity for full funding and streamlining.
I would
housing.
go with alcohol revenue modernization, so I don't know. That
Okay.
puts-
Yeah. That.
I mean, if they're wrenching
It doesn't
anything.
matter. It's 3-2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it
So we're
doesn't
going to
matter.
go with full. So we're going to go transportation package, infrastructure funding, land availability and land use streaming, public meeting law clarity, full funding and streamlining for housing production. Those are the 5 for city manager. Cool. Okay. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this work session and we're going to reconvene for our CEP meeting at 6 p.m. It's a work session. There's action. So, okay. So we are going to start this work session, the Forest Grove City Council. No public comment will be taken and the council will take no formal action. And it is actually a work session of the Urban Renewal Committee, I believe, and not even the council. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our city manager and our assistant city manager. And they'll figure out who's going first.
Okay, Mariah, do you have the presentation? Thank you, Chair Wenzel and directors. I'll just go ahead and kind of get into it while Mariah is bringing this up. We actually have 2 work sessions planned for the Urban Renewal Agency. This is kind of to set the stage for the second work session, although there may be some things at the end that we would like to talk to the board about potentially following up on between now and the meeting in August. So there's quite a bit of background here. And again, we're kind of just setting the stage for a second work session in August when we get some studies done. So with that, I'll kind of dive into it. I'm just going to not go into all of the details of every slide. I'm going to kind of pull out some of the more pertinent things that are germane to this discussion, but would welcome any questions of either Kim or I during the presentation. So as I kind of already mentioned, the purpose of tonight's work session is to give the board sufficient information to make an informed policy decision about the next steps regarding really 3 developable properties, and we're going to go into detail on what those are, that are currently owned by the Urban Renewal Agency. This is the first of 2 planned work sessions. So next slide, please. This is what we're going to cover tonight: background, some milestones, some case studies, the property overview of all 3 properties, and then a little bit about the financial metrics. The work session number 2 is really going to be kind of what I would characterize as potentially consequential in the sense that it's going to have the feasibility studies. We'll talk a little bit about what we have so far with those, and then some potential marketing and development pathways.
Question.
Yes.
In the marketing and development
Mhm.
pathways, that's when we're going to talk about like what this council is willing to offer developers.
Yeah, and we
Is
might
that
get
like,
in.
I just want to know, where is this happening at? Like,
Yeah,
that's,
we might get into a little bit of that tonight as well. I think that discussion will be fully informed once the feasibility studies are done about the grocery store and the boutique hotel. But it doesn't mean that it can't be talked about tonight either.
or having ideas.
So really, in terms of the Vision 2040 plan, these 3 properties, redevelopment or development of these properties, really fits into kind of a multitude of goals. The first one is the economy. Some of it is specific, some of it is more general. There's incentive programs for small businesses, strengthening our partnerships, increasing commercial business development, looking at a potential grocery store. Next slide. Another goal area is community growth, and that looks at really activating policies around utilizing downstairs or upstairs apartments. That's specific, to the Urban Renewal Agency. Wellness through infrastructure policies and design standards. And so there's been some conversation about a potential plaza at one of the sites that could look at, potentially some wellness programs associated with that. Walkability, pedestrian barriers, addressing those, explore park and ride options. That really kind of gets into transit-oriented development. Community connection, exploring opportunities to create a central community gathering space. That also speaks specifically to something that might be attached to a potential property or a potential development. So the URA purpose, we've really covered this a lot, but generally it's to eliminate blight, it's to improve utilization of land, encourage private investment, and at the end, increase the taxable value of the property so that when it returns to the original taxing district, that it is worth more than it was otherwise before, and in doing so, raises additional revenue. Next slide. So I am going to focus a little bit on this one. These are the URA plan goals, and these are the ones that are enumerated currently in the URA plan. Goal 1 is to provide opportunities for public participation. Goal 2, a prudent annual budget to minimize financial risk. We're going to go into that with some of the financial metrics, talk about that tonight. Improve the local investment climate by reducing financial barriers to development and redevelopment. And then 4, promote a vibrant Forest Grove Town Center through strategic urban renewal investments. We'll talk a little bit about the programs that we have for that. And then last, promote commercial and mixed-use redevelopment of sites along the Pacific Avenue corridor. Next slide. So this is just to kind of get some thoughts out there. We just went online, did a little bit of research. If you look at some of these developments in Springfield, for example, that's a mixed-use development. It has some commercial on the bottom. It has some studio, 1, 2, and multifamily on top. It's got a public plaza. This was all kind of part of a overall redevelopment area or redevelopment concept in Springfield. And it was very strategically centered on trying to get a central community gathering space. So that was one of their primary objectives. Forest Grove, that was a rendering of the Jesse Quinn project that happened. We'll go a little bit into that in 2016. The example with Monmouth, that's a multifamily unit that is being proposed and bid right now. And what they're really looking for is some redevelopment concepts associated with an existing building. So when you look at kind of adding upstairs apartments, that's precisely what they're really trying to do with this development. And then Independence, this was one that was constructed, I think, in 2018. It was the same developer that did the Jesse Quinn project here in Forest Grove. And that had a lot of kind of concepts. It was a riverfront property, but it had townhouses, it had apartments, it had different types of apartments, it had some amenities associated with the clubhouse, and then it also had a hotel associated with it. So it was pretty comprehensive. In terms of a little bit more background about the URA area, we're looking at 6% of the overall area within the city. And it's depicted by the boundary here. It's generally flanked by 19th and then also Pacific, east and west of north and south of both of those. Next slide. This is something that I know all of you have seen before, so I won't go into it. But generally what this is showing is that if you use the tax increment above a frozen base of assessed value and you invest that, then over time, you increase that taxable assessed value by using that tax increment financing. And so when it returns back to the original taxing district, in this case 2034, that taxing district, in this case the general fund or the city of Forest Grove, would receive more than it otherwise would have if you had not invested. The thing that's kind of important about this slide is that, and you'll see this in the financial metrics later, is that our debt is currently structured to 2034. So it was intentionally structured as a 10-year note, not to extend beyond 2034. And that's part of that slide. Next slide, please. Is it still? Okay. So a little bit, some milestones. We just kind of put this together. The URA was established 12 years ago in 2014 by ordinance. The very next year, the agency purchased Time Litho. When we did what was called an exclusive negotiating agreement. That was after we had done an RFP process. So we entered into negotiations. We eventually reached a disposition and development agreement to do the Jesse Quinn, and construction began. When we looked at the overall project, the project cost was $15.5 million. There was approximately $2 million in URA assistance. That assistance came through various forms, all of which were allowed under the plan. And then in 2018, so this development is now done, we started looking at rolling out some programs. And the first program was the Storefront Improvement Grant Program. It was very popular at the time, still is relatively popular, although we are having fewer applications, I think primarily because we've had 17 storefronts, I believe, done now. We also did a installation art program at the time. And then in 2019, we did the design grant program that was to assist businesses with a potential design that they may want to fund. We also partially funded the 21st Avenue campus corridor study. That's what led to a request for some federal funds for that particular project. 2020, we did the Site B RFP for the grocery store. And that was, there was a requirement there for housing, of which 30% of those units would be affordable. And as you probably recall, what ended up happening with that was the number of units was so small that it was not a project that was eligible for funding for affordable housing. COVID hit, and so in that particular year, we also introduced the Small Business Assistant Grants Program funded by the URA. That was kind of a one-time program during COVID. Next slide. We received one proposal for Site B. We did enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement for the grocery store and for affordable housing. Ultimately, that project was not financially feasible, predominantly because they were not able to secure some, not grant funds, but some essentially grant funds to construct the affordable housing. The grocery store market analysis was, we started re-upping that analysis to see if kind of anything changed associated with the grocery store. And then in 2023, we followed that up with another RFP for a grocery store. In that particular case, it was, if you have any kind of proposal about a grocery store on Site B, please let us know. And we also started drafting the BIG program, or the Building Improvement Grant Program. And then so 2 years ago, we received one proposal for a grocery store. We did enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement. We introduced the BIG and the design grant programs, the design grant tied to the BIG program. And then we reviewed the URA plan for opportunity sites for potential purchases. 2025 was a pretty big year last year. We were unfortunately notified that the grocery store was not financially feasible, principally due to the higher interest rates that had accrued over the last couple of years. We targeted 2 opportunity sites, issued some debt, we awarded some grants, we modified the BIG program, we partially funded the Glow Up project in downtown, and that led to ultimately this year finalizing the purchase of both the theater building and the Woodfold property. So I'm going to cover a case study, and then I'm going to pass it over to Kim, who's going to largely do the rest of the presentation. But we wanted to offer the board just some kind of other examples of what other URA programs are doing, where their focus is at, what some of their accomplishments have been, and just kind of how they structure the program. And what we found is we looked at Beaverton. They've had a URA plan adopted since 2010. Fundamentally, it's just a much bigger program than we have. It's a 30-year program, or $150 million in what's called TIF funding. So if they issue $150 million, whatever that expiration period would be to recruit to pay off that debt would be how long their URA. So it's either 30 years or $150 million. It could go past 30 years. They have an annual revenue stream of $7.4 million. You'll see in our financial metrics later that our annual revenue stream is about $1 million. And then interestingly, they have 5 allocation categories, and these categories were enumerated in the URA plan itself back in 2010. And so they structure their programs based on these kind of 5 initiatives, if you will, and they have different projects for each one. They recently introduced a building improvement grant program similar to ours. It's been very popular, and I believe over the course of that grant program, they've awarded 17 grants. If you haven't been there, it's worth the trip. If you have been there, then this is a review, but one of the URA plan projects was the Round. And the Round was really kind of a mixed-use development. It had a public plaza, it had restaurants, it had condos. It's what they call a transit-oriented development. The MAX line goes right next to it. So whether it's MAX or whether it's a bus, they have workspaces, they have a parking garage underneath, they have ground-level retail. So it really kind of incorporated a lot of the concepts that I know the board has been looking at kind of all within one development. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kim.
Yeah, so looking at the city of Bend, they took a little bit of a different approach. They actually have 3 different URAs within their city with 3 different plans, each adopted in another year. And we're using this as an example of how they have done different types of incentives depending on what it was they were trying to incentivize in that particular area and in that particular plan. So in their first, Juniper Ridge, which was established in 2005, that is an area where they were looking to increase industrial development and employment density. So that primary URA activity has been development assistance, up to 10% of total development and project costs, and that's through property tax refunds. In the Murphy Crossing area, established in 2008, this is an area that they were looking to establish more residential housing. It was largely viewed as undevelopable due to poor access for transportation utilities. So the URA funding in that example has been directly invested in transportation and utility improvements. The core area, established in 2020, this encompasses a lot of the downtown and Bend, has the most in common with our URA, the largest, most economically diverse of the three areas, and they've used more of a mixture of grants, direct funding, development assistance through property tax refunds in order to incentivize the kind of development that they're looking at there. Switching gears over to looking at our properties. So we have two types of zoning that are impacting the properties the URA has. One being town center core. This only affects the theater building. And the emphasis here is that in a town center core, you must have a retail service located on the ground floor. So some kind of walk-in clientele. And then the upper floor can be used for office, residential use. So it can be a mixed-use building or a single source commercial kind of space. For both Site B and Woodfold, they are considered town center transitions. So this can be a mix of retail, office, light industrial, residential use, and does not have the same requirement for retail on the ground floor. Next slide. So looking in a little bit deeper, so this is Site B, approximately 1 acre. Again, this is town center transition. So does not require retail on the first floor, is sloped as gravel. There have been 2 RFPs. Jesse had said a second ago, neither resulted in the DDA, and the grocery store feasibility study is currently being updated. Next slide. The Woodfold lot, nearly twice the size of Site B at almost 2 acres, also zoned town center transition, which makes it pretty broad use. It does include 2 storage buildings currently, although we may want to revisit those buildings. One is under month-to-month lease, and one is being considered for temporary storage by the city, with the understanding that this would be temporary and this is not the final and best use for that site. There are 3 food carts on the site that are under month-to-month leases, and a property management firm is managing all of those leases. Finally, the theater building, town center core, retail must be on the first floor, includes a gravel parking strip along the backside adjacent to the city central parking lot. Initial concept design shows a potential for somewhere between 14 to 31 rooms. However, there may be seismic improvements that are required. We do know that both the roof and the HVAC system are past their design life, so there is some timeliness with redevelopment on this property that we need to start moving forward on. And there is a property management firm, same property management firm, also managing 3 multi-year leases and 1 month-to-month lease in this space. And in our second work session, we'll be going into the boutique hotel feasibility study that is currently being developed surrounding this building. Next slide. And this map shows the proximity of all 3 properties. So on the left, that is Site B, in the center top, the theater building, and in the bottom right corner, the Woodfold property.
So potential projects on URA property, this just basically says the URA plan says that development assistance or redevelopment assistance can be used for the following categories. A public plaza, some type of transit-oriented development. So an example of that could be assisting in some way to make it a TOD development. Mixed-use development, including housing, retail, and office. Standalone residential development is eligible as a potential project. Standalone commercial development is eligible. Building rehabilitation, so fixing up a building that you may have otherwise purchased. Site clearance and preparation, we've done that both for the Jesse Quinn and for Site B. And then environmental remediation, which is often coupled with site clearance and preparation. We've also used URA funds and participated in that as well. Next slide. And then these are just the types of development assistance. Again, this is mostly review. There's actually hard costs, whether it's site preparation, construction expenses, and on-off site infrastructure improvements. There's soft costs, which can be studies. We're just talked about a couple studies, engineering reports, traffic impact analysis, environmental analysis, SDC waivers or land write-downs. You can do low interest loans, you can do grants, you can do matching grants. So there's a number of different ways in which the board, if they want to, could assist some type of development or incentivize some type of development to occur. Next slide.
So digging deeper into our financial metrics, the URA plan specifically authorized $15 million in maximum indebtedness. So thinking back on the chart with the triangle, the maximum indebtedness is the calculation of how much debt can the URA effectively pay off during the time frame. For our plan, it is $15 million, and it allows up to 3 debt issuances. Currently, debt has been issued 2 times. Current debt amounts to about $577,000 per year of debt service payments until the year 2034. The URA could issue more debt. So maximum indebtedness of $15 million, $7.27 million was issued, and allowable debt remaining is $7.73 million. Annual revenue that comes in, again, looking at that triangle graph from before, is about $1 million. Again, about a little more than half of that, $575,000, is going into debt service. Currently, $370,000 is being diverted into the grant program. This is a budgeted amount, and about $175,000 is going to general operations. And this is a fixed amount that we have determined for the URA required to function. Its annual revenues are expected to match annual expenses in 27-28, and annual revenues will exceed current expenses in 28-29. Which may allow the board to have a little more flexibility and incentives that you can offer going into 28-29. Currently, there's approximately $1.5 million in unappropriated fund balance or savings. So of the $7 or so million that was taken out in debt, most of that was used to purchase 2 properties earlier this year, but there is still $1.5 million sitting in that unappropriated fund balance. Assuming other expenses remain the same, this can be used to incentivize projects. Based on current projections, this number, the savings number, will start to increase in fiscal year 28-29. Next slide. And from here, we will go into some hypothetical scenarios about how you could use that investment and what the considerations around those investments could be.
I know that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. So, Chair, I was wondering if you wanted had any
Let's do a
questions at
little
this
check
point,
for
so-
understanding.
Yeah.
Up until this point, are we good? Are there any questions? I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. So we just wanted to outline a couple scenarios and just kind of, again, this is just food for thought. So let's just make an assumption that the boutique hotel study says it's going to require $2 million in incentives to attract the development of a boutique hotel. These are just some of the considerations. I'm sure there are others, but these are some of the considerations and trade-offs that would come up that would be brought to the board. One would be whether you want to incentivize a boutique hotel, and if so, at what amount? Or is that an amount that starts to say, you know what, maybe we don't want to do a hotel, maybe we want to do something else. Don't know what that might be, but how much do you want to incentivize, a boutique hotel going in at that particular property? The second consideration, what would the impact of doing so if you do choose to incentivize it at $2 million? What's the impact on the other 2 properties? If you remember kind of the cash flow, or if you remember the annual revenue, or if you remember the amount that's kind of in theory in savings and what that looks like going over time, how might that impact the development of potentially Site B and also Woodfold? So, and then the last would be whether to adjust, kind of the URA annual programs to further incentivize development. So, for example, as part of that cash flow, you have the debt requirement, and then you also have the programs. You have grant programs, and then you have some operational expenses associated with that. There's always a potential option that if it's very important for the board to incentivize the development of this property, and it requires X amount of incentives to do so, there's of course the option to suspend potential annual programs to go ahead and incentivize that and use it for this until such time that that requirement is paid off, and then maybe you restart the annual programs. We're not suggesting that that happen. We're just trying to illustrate some of the ways the financial levers could work depending upon what you may or may not want to do and depending upon what value you may place on trying to do that particular development. Next slide.
So looking at hypothetical scenario 2, in this one, it would be that the grocery store study says that there's insufficient URA incentive capacity to attract a downtown grocery store. So some considerations that may be brought to the board. This first one has to do with really the marketing pathway and how we can market or change the marketing strategy for a property. So this is whether to continue requiring a grocery store in future proposals or to open up the broader RFP in order to allow for other types of development. So if not, what type of a development would then be desirable for Site B and Woodfold would be a question that would come to the board. Are there other public amenities, such as a plaza, that would be a condition of development? And if so, which site is best suited? What types of incentives would the board want to offer? And is that a sufficient incentive to require or encourage that kind of development? So depending on the consideration, there might be other incentives that might be available to offer. So finally, we want to talk a little bit tonight about marketing and developing properties, knowing that we will be coming back to this conversation pretty thoroughly in our next work session, but we're hoping that we can get some direction from the board this evening in order so we can do some more work between now and August. So we know that there are several avenues that exist to market and develop the properties, including development requirements, incentives, whether to package the sites together and separately, such as we've listed throughout both of the hypotheticals. And so we'd like to work to define those pathways available and perhaps get a start on some of those marketing materials. So some of the options that we've been researching include a notice of site availability, which is an extremely broad opportunity for folks to bid on or propose different concepts for development. An RFQ, which can be kind of an initial strainer for folks who might be best qualified in order to develop the properties within certain requirements of the board. A request for proposals, which goes somewhere after ideally would be after an RFQ. So we've strained for the best qualified fits, and then we ask them for concepts in the RFP process. And then developing or asking for some marketing assistance in order to develop those marketing materials. So this includes a detailed offering memorandum that a realtor would help create, active marketing through real estate portals, industry contacts, et cetera, and starting to do some site tours or a combination thereof. So what we would like to hear from the board tonight is if sorry, it's getting past 9 o'clock. So what we'd like to hear is if there is sufficient desire from the board for us to move forward with starting to work on some of the marketing assistance, particularly around the boutique hotel property, as it is the most time sensitive of the properties. And then we can come back with some of that draft marketing material as well as the feasibility study during the August meeting and come forward with more of a pathway to how that property could develop.
I think the only thing I would add to what Kim was mentioning is that we're kind of in this place of we kind of, one, don't know what we don't know, but two, we're also kind of asking about what's the art of the possible. Like, what is the demand out there? We don't know all of the conditions of what that demand might be, but is there demand to develop these properties? And if so, what type of demand may or may that not be, so that we can provide the board some additional information. Part of that analysis is going to be the feasibility studies. Any potential developer is going to look at those feasibility studies, and there's going to be some economic metrics in there and total rate of return, et cetera, about what may or may not be possible, what their debt requirements might be, how long it might take to pay it off, all of those kinds of considerations, what level of incentive might be necessary. But we're in this place where, in terms of getting some marketing assistance, putting these properties out there, and an offering of memorandum is a document that essentially lists out all of the aspects of the property, very similar to if you were trying to market your house, I guess, for lack of a better analogy. But it would put the acreage, it would put the annual assessment, the taxation, the zoning, potential opportunities, location. It would potentially tell a story about it, but it would get it out into certain kind of development portals that we just are not familiar with and we don't have experience with, to begin to kind of define what the art of the possible is for the board. And because that at this point is, we just don't know what those possibilities may or may not be from a market perspective. So.
Okay, do you have anything else, or can we ask questions?
Just a couple last questions. So in addition to thinking about the marketing assistance, we're also interested if you have any other concepts that you'd like staff to consider beyond what you've shared previously: public plaza, grocery store, boutique hotel, as we prepare for the August work session.
Okay, great. Thanks. Councillor Faulkner.
So I can't wait to see the actual analyses. And I'm wondering if, kind of similar to my questions to the county, before we put together, I would like to see this council have a little bit of a, sort of a gut check on, what are some of the things that might be contributing to the fact that the boutique hotel needs $2 million, to make it potentially pencil for them. And so, are there things in our code like the height restrictions, things that are actually preventing, this thing from happening, even though that's one of the desires I've heard since before I was on council, is that we want this thing to be a boutique hotel. So rather than putting something out there that we know is going to cost, us more money, because it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, for a developer to actually make that dream happen. will we have an opportunity to assess, hey, maybe the city needs to be the applicant first on some spot zoning changes and I consider that sort of like site preparation work, like, is there some work that we need to do in advance to, make this place more, and this isn't just, this is not a question just relevant to the theater site. I'm thinking about site B, and I'm also thinking about Woodfold with this question. So
Yeah.
it's not just height restrictions, it's floor area, ratios. It's also height restrictions. It's anything, all these other things that the city has sort of like encumbered on these sites that make them less attractive and less likely for them to develop into these things that the community says they want. I just want to, I don't want to put the cart, I don't want to see us put something out there that's doomed to fail because we haven't assessed whether or not we've actually sort of shot ourselves in the foot,
I think that's kind of the most important thing about getting some sort of realtor or real estate professional on board early is that they'll be able to help us identify if there's areas that make the property less marketable.
Right.
And so that's something that we can start to work on right away.
Yeah, for example, if they, if it's only 3 stories and a vertical housing tax credit, you have to have 4 stories and the code says 3. But, we can look at that as some potential change. But as I think Kim mentioned, kind of hearing that from the development community, I think would also be very helpful about what some of the encumbrances might be toward redevelopment or development of those properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I'm just saying, I don't want to put $2 million towards something if we could actually save ourselves $1 million by saying, go another floor up, put some more rooms in there.
And what I wrote down was that you're looking for the why behind why there's an incentive requirement.
Right.
That's a good point. Any other questions?
I got a
Councilor Marshall.
random question. When it comes to Site B, a lot of the issues that run into the pitch of the property. Is there anything that the city can do the URA can do to level the property out before starting to advertise it? I know that was been a huge issue for the last 2 times that they've come in because of leveling it out was going to be a big issue.
So the answer to that is yes, URA funds can be used for site preparation. And I think it becomes, I'm going to kind of circle back to that. That's another one of those things that falls into the category of if a developer comes back and says, you know what, if we were working with a level site, we might feel differently about this particular property. And then it becomes kind of an economic comparison about, okay, well, how much does it cost to do some site prep and make it more attractive? And maybe you attract even more proposals, right? As opposed to making that a requirement of the proposer themselves and them saying, well, because of that, we're not going to be interested. You really need to start with a flat parcel. Those are some of the attributes, I guess, that we're looking for from the development community and from some additional marketing to be able to determine how can we incentivize it. That would be characterized as an incentive. It would just be a site preparation incentive prior to a potential RFP process. Mm-hmm. So somehow we'd have to get the information to determine if we want to spend that money prior to an RFP, or if you do an RFP that is potentially more open and therefore more flexible, and they wouldn't require that, and they would come in and do this. It's just, there's a lot of variables to kind of weigh as part of that process. So.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the comments that have been shared already. Those are really super valuable and bundled with the path you're on. I'm supportive and look forward to the next work session. I was just curious. It's been a while since the study on converting Pacific and 19th to two-way was brought up, and whether how that factors into like traffic studies and how a developer would view those properties differently. And I don't know. I don't remember where the alignment was when we would hear about that again.
So that was and this is a study to look at Pacific, returning sections or portions of Pacific and 19th to two-way.
It's decoupling the coupling.
The decoupling the coupling, essentially. Yeah, good way to put it. And there's a lot of, the study has not started, but it was included in the budget. I could kind of loop back with Greg Robertson, the Public Works Director, and find out more about that, and then get back to the board. I do think if is there a correlation between the type of street and then potentially the type of development? Yeah, there can be a correlation there. Whether that would turn into a causation at this point, I don't know that we know that. That could also be kind of one of those things we may be able to talk to, a realtor and say, if this was a mixed-use development with commercial and residential, would a two-way street in front potentially incentivize that, or would it disincentivize it? That could be one of those kind of hypothetical questions we could potentially build into that, because it is a study that the city is looking at doing in the future.
So by like what I'm hearing from council and counselors and staff is I think too, as we look at that 3-year work plan is really just trying to get to the root of the things that, this is, I think, a priority, like developing these properties, and it will help most everything in the 2040 plan. But then also looking at some of the other action items and then making sure, with our comprehensive plan, our development code, the decoupling, like how can we intentionally be using staff resource time to build these things out at the same time almost, right? So we are addressing, I think you put it really well with Councilor Falconer's statement, the why behind. Like if we can fix these whys within our work plan and with our city actions, then that's a huge incentive and hopefully continues to move these bigger projects. I don't know if I said that correctly, but that's what I was like kind of reflecting and hearing.
Yeah, the
Whole package.
Yeah.
And just some of your other questions, like I am, back in, it doesn't matter, but a number of years ago, I was like, oh, we should have buckets, right? Like we should have this percentage, this budget allocation for transportation, for this, for that. And, it's always good just to learn and reflect and think. But the reality is in Forest Grove, our budget's too small to really do that. Like we wouldn't be able to fund the things we need to fund in the way we should. We don't have Beaverton's budget. And so I'm okay as we start progressing with this work. I'm okay pausing on some of the grant programs like the storefront. That's not being subscribed to the point it was 5 years ago, right? So I think that that's kind of what we have to be flexible with is the ebb and flow of like where our focus is when, because we only have so many resources. We only have so much staff resource. We only have so much money, and then the other thing that I want to just put out there is it's true that people have been talking about a boutique hotel for a really long time and a grocery store for a really long time, but I'm open to any development options. And just because we want this, like, doesn't mean other projects won't benefit the community. And so, I think back of that, the fresh foods and the requirement of affordable housing. Like we had an affordable housing requirement and it didn't pencil out. And I think that was because our scope was too narrow. Like if I don't learn from the things I've done wrong in the past, then I shouldn't be doing the job. But so I think too, like I just also want to very publicly say that, sometimes it's better to be very open with that, like, hey, I don't know if it's called like the NOSA, like just like, hey, what are your thoughts? And the fact that now we have 2 vacant lots, and sometimes it's easier, I would assume, I'm not in developing, but like to have more space, and then maybe they can pencil out the financing for 2 locations instead of just 1. I don't know these things, but what I do know is I'm open to learn and I'm open to find out, and I'm open. Like we have the foundation, the long-term strategic plan. As long as we stay true to that, I don't think we should narrow our scope too much.
And I think a lot of the intent of this work session was to kind of illustrate those interrelationships and then just kind of get the board thinking about what those might be, because it's starting to get to that point where there'll be enough information where I think the board can start looking at what the preferences may be.
Cool. Do you need anything more from us?
No, I think we've got the direction that we need to make sure that we have a really productive work session in August.
Does the board have any other comments or? Okay. Well, thanks for a great meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned. do that as a work session. I don't even know. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm a little bit late. I would like to call this meeting to order. It's 7:08. Will our city recorder please call roll?
Counselor Schimmel?
Here.
Counselor Falconer?
Here.
Counselor Martinez?
Here.
Counselor Marshall?
Here.
Mayor Wenzel?
Here. We acknowledge the land on which Forest Grove is located rests on the traditional village sites of the Atfalati, a tribe of the Kalapua who originally inhabited the Tualatin Plains, including Forest Grove. They are now part of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. Will the audience and council please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There are no proclamations this evening, so we'll move on to item B on the agenda, which is public comment. Public comment time provided for anyone wishing to speak to the council on any item not scheduled for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 2 minutes unless additional time is granted by the presiding officer. The public comment period shall not exceed 30 minutes unless extended by the council. Our first person and only person, as of right now, signed up for public testimony is Mr. Dale Feek. Good evening, Mr. Feek.
Good evening, Mayor Wenzel and councilors. Dale Feek. May I have 3 minutes?
You may.
Thank you very much. I have two topics. One is the Forest Grove Permanent Supportive Housing Update. The second is current situation and what others have a right to expect us and what we have a right to expect from others. The people on the agenda today is Jill Chin and Lisa Varn representing the county, and has to do with Forest Grove Permanent Supportive Housing Update. I made a little bit of public comment about the county. You know, it's going to be Jim's Automotive. They're going to refurbish that and have a great program. So it's great that you're supporting that, and the county is supporting you, and you're supporting each other. That's great. Mortimer J. Adler, prominent philosopher, has written the book called Aristotle for Everybody, Difficult Thought Made Easy. And he says, based upon everything that's been read, that's the only book that's ever is morally sound, undogmatic, is Nicomachean Ethics, written in the fifth century by Aristotle. And Adler updated it so it's current for women and blacks and everybody else. Okay. So, because of the current political climate, please consider his words of wisdom below. What do others have a right to expect from us? From Aristotle, for Everybody, Difficult Thought Made Easy. That we keep the promises we make to them. That we tell them the truth when telling a lie would hurt them in some way. That we return anything we have borrowed and promised to return. That we pay our debts to them. That we do not steal what belongs to them. That we do not injure their health, damage their bodies, or kill them. And what's happening in the world, we really have to consider. That we do not interfere with their freedom of action when their conduct in no way injures us. And 8, that we do not make false statements that would injure their reputation or give them a bad name. And Adler says, all these things and more of the same sort can be summed up by saying that others have a right to expect from us that we do nothing that might impede or obstruct their pursuit of happiness. Nothing might interfere with or prevent their obtaining or possessing the real goods they need to make good lives for themselves. It is their need for these real goods that gives them a right to them, and it is their right to them that we are obliged to respect if we ourselves are just. Adler also says we have a right to expect the same thing from others. I think those are really things that all should be considered. I sent this to the 4 mayors and councilors that I sent to before, and to the housing authority of the county. Thank you for giving me an extra minute.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Feek. Is there anyone else in the audience who may not have signed up for public comment who wishes to give public comment? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to give public comment? Seeing none, we will now move on to item C, which is our consent agenda. Items considered routine that are adopted with a single motion without discussion. Councilors may remove items prior to the motion to adopt. Any removed items are discussed and acted upon following the approval of the remaining items. What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. The consent agenda was moved by Councilor Falconer and seconded by Councilor Schimmel. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a 5-0 vote. Additions or deletions? City Manager, any additions or deletions?
No additions or deletions. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Any proposed by councilors? None. So now we will move on to our presentations. And just like that, folks, I caught us back up. Look how great that was. Amazing. Okay, 7:15 presentations. The council will hold questions until the end of each presentation. And first up, we have our Metro update. And I'm going to bring up Council President Juan Carlos Gonzalez, who used to be our Metro District 4 councilor. How do I say your last name? Palacios. Welcome, Councilor Palacios. Thank you for being our councilor.
Well, it's just such a delight to have an opportunity to be on this side of the dais again. And I want to thank Councilor Palacios for joining me. As just last week, passed the baton to him. He's the new District 4 Metro Councilor. We have a few updates and key slides that we want to share with you to just give you a flavor of the things that the Metro Council is working on and that have an impact to the wonderful city of Forest Grove. So I know that we have a PowerPoint we sent, at least I hope.
The anticipation. I mean, the only theme song I know is Jeopardy, but I don't think it's appropriate right now.
Well, in the meantime, and it's okay if we don't, we can just talk about what we're planning to share on the slides. I would love to give Councilor Palacios an opportunity to just introduce himself. To council.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much. My name is Councilor Miles Palacios. He pronoun. I think I was doing the math. I'm just over
veteran status.
But yes, I live in Aloha. Member of the Metro Council.
Great. Thanks for coming out.
It's okay, Mariah. No problem at all. We're just going to get into it then. I have three main things that I want to update the council on, and then I'll hand it off to Councilor Palacios. The first will be the TV Highway Transit and Safety Project, one that the city of Forest Grove has been not just a great partner in, but an investor, which has been very important. Also, we'll share a little bit about the Housing Acceleration Fund, which was the first action that the Metro Council took this calendar year. And then finally provide an update on the Regional Policy Oversight Committee, which is the new oversight and accountability structure for the region's supportive housing services measure, which is this region's primary tool to address housing and homelessness crisis that is unfolding in every corner of the region. First, I'll just touch on the TV Highway Transit and Safety Project. I think folks know that the project is focused on bringing frequent express service from downtown Beaverton to downtown Forest Grove. TV Highway is the highest bus ridership line in Washington County. Also one of the most fatal for pedestrians and has some of the most crashes in all of Washington County. This project is focused on providing much faster travel times to riders, improving the bus waiting areas, so the stations, and creating a much more of a destination, and just general safer access to transit. This means sidewalks and crossing across TV Highway, which is an endemic issue throughout the entire corridor. A few months ago, Metro formally handed the project over to TriMet. TriMet right now is leading the project planning, outreach, and design, and they are the ones that will pursue the formal capital investment grant, the CIG grant with the Federal Transit Administration. And right now, the most important thing that I would love your continued leadership on is that the region needs to be coordinated with our legislature and in the legislative session. When you add the amount of money that has been raised by the region, it's about $100 million. We would unlock $150 million from the federal government. What we need is $50 million, and it's the state's facility. It's the state's road. They, at a minimum, should be putting $50 million in, and that would unlock $250 million of investment. That's kind of the value for the state there. So the TV Highway Transit and Safety Project construction is expected to begin in the spring of 2028, assuming we're able to secure the $50 million, and service would begin by 2030. Again, assuming we're able to move forward to plan. And Councilor Palacios will soon take over and sit on the Policy and Budget Committee. But that's been one of the biggest projects that I've worked on as a councilor, and I really want to thank y'all. And I know Councilor Palacios is going to crush it. The next is the Housing Accelerator Fund. Again, this was the first action that the Metro Council took in 2026. We created a one-time $5 million grant program for cities and jurisdictions in the Portland metro area. These are technical assistance funds to support housing production. And, as you know, every city in the region is required to complete a housing needs analysis. And so there's a wide range of strategies and a whole wide range of things that a lot of communities are identifying. The state is putting very little money to activate those strategies. So the Metro Council activated reserves, and this will be a grant program that I really hope that the city of Forest Grove applies to. And there's a wide range of things that are possible. Some examples include pre-development activities that include site surveys, feasibility studies, area plans, and other activities that prepare sites for development. Also grants to jurisdictions that could support activities like technical work around the acceleration of permit reviews. Again, site suitability studies, looking at your code and how you're able to move housing forward, and any other strategies that the city might be interested in. So we're hoping that the application will be launched this summer. So just for Jesse and the team and for the council to be on the lookout. I know that Forest Grove wants to build more housing so our families can afford to live here and continue to thrive here and plant roots here. So I would love for the city of Forest Grove to get some money from that. And then lastly for me on SHS, the Supportive Housing Services measure, one of my top priorities even before I became the Metro Council president has been to collectively strengthen and improve the SHS system, the Supportive Housing Services system, which funds the 3 counties in the metro area. I want to make sure that voters know that every single dollar that we are spending is making the highest possible impact, and that we're making progress in making homelessness short, rare, and non-reoccurring for people. A major step of the reforms that the Metro Council has led over the last 24 months is creating a new oversight committee, the Regional Policy Oversight Committee on Supportive Housing Services. For folks that remember, and it's okay if you don't, before this committee, we had 2 separate committees, the Tri-County Planning Body and the SHS Oversight Committee, kind of wonky, 2 different committees, didn't always know how to talk back and forth with each other. And we felt it was important to create a single unified body of oversight. And that includes cities, counties, members of the justice system, health system, the governor's office has a seat at the table. So really every layer of government, every sector of our homeless services response, truly create a strong regional program and system. So far, we've completed 4 meetings. And I keep telling people that we have about 13 more meetings before the region needs to refer a ballot to renew the program. So I feel a tremendous urgency. Mm-hmm. And this measure is so important to this region. And I want to show folks that the money will make the biggest impact possible. The Washington County area has 2 votes on this body. That is Washington County Commissioner Jerry Willey, who represents the county, And then cities in Washington County are represented by Hillsborough Mayor Beach Pace as the primary, and then Beaverton Mayor Lacey Beatty is the alternate. So that's kind of how Washington County has its voice represented. Also, there is a Washington County service provider, which is Community Action, which is headquartered in the Hillsborough and Beaverton area. But anyway, I'm going to pass it off to Councilor Palacios to talk about Parks and Nature.
Thank you so much. So this is my first presentation in general as counselor. But I'm super excited that I get to talk about Parks and Nature. For those of you who don't know, I have come just recently from a role in the last 3 years as a director over at the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District. And a lot of my professional career has been in space. So very exciting for me to come into this role with a deep love for our parks and nature spaces. So the opportunity to get to tackle this is really exciting for me. This will be one of my main priorities in this term. So the Parks and Nature Levy, it is something that over the last 30 years, Metro has been known for the work that we've done to protect and restore the habitats throughout this region, thinking very clearly about our clean water, healthy fish, wildlife, and other opportunities for just the people of this region to also experience the beauty that is our community outside of our city. A big part of how we are able to do that is the funding that we get from the levy. This levy is expiring in 2028. It has been around for about 15 years after it was first initiated in 2013. As we continue to have the protection of these natural spaces as a priority for the region, not just for Metro, but for community stores, we are starting to think about what we need to do to get ahead of this next phase of the levy's life. Originally, it was approved, as I said, in 2013 to improve our parks and natural areas. At that time, it was passed with a 9.6 cents per $1,000 of assessed value on homes for property taxes. And the average household would be paying around $28 a year. And it raised about $19 million over annually over the time that we've run, which has been invaluable to the projects in the region for these particular works. They renewed the levy in 2016 and 2022, each time with more than 70% of support on the ballot. The rate for the levy has remained unchanged since it was first passed in 2013. However, as we think about that unchanged rate, we also need to recognize that there has been a massive development of what we do in terms of the portfolio for our nature and recreation park spaces. To be a little bit more clear on that, back in 2013, we had about 15,000 acres and about 13 parks that were ready to go for community participation in the Metro region. That is now around 20,000 acres, as well as 20 developed parks. So currently, these funds fund about 2/3 of all of our programs around parks and nature development in our operating budget specifically. Metro Council, as we kind of think about these next steps, will need to think about what renewal looks like, being at the current service level or a moderate increase to what we would be putting in front of voters, 2 to 3 cents to help kind of just adjust for the reality of the change in what we are providing, what we have, and also just the growth of the region itself over these past 15. So that's a bit about the levy, and I'm also really excited to talk about a new opportunity for dollars in partnership with Metro and for our communities here, the Regional Refresh Fund. So this is one of the ways that Metro has supported communities across the region by reinvesting funds collected through the regional system fee. This fund in particular, has just now received additional funding for the fiscal year of 2026 to 27, which has also created opportunity to expand eligibility to include some of our mural installations or graffiti abatement projects. Eligible projects would include neighborhood litter cleanups, large household item collection events, and community recycling funds. The Refresh Fund is available year-round to local governments, nonprofit schools and business district associations. It's flexible, low barrier funding to support immediate cleanup in underserved communities, and it can be used for a variety of different things. So there's a lot of flexibility under the umbrella for community cleanup. Awards can be up to $5,000 per project. And for this year, we have $20,000 that we can put in the fiscal year towards projects such as these. The real important piece that we want to hammer home here is that in the last calendar year, we did not receive any applications for this particular fund from District 4. And we really want to make sure that District 4 is getting proper representation in these types of programs across the board within Metro. So the overall number of funds that have been distributed to Washington County is significantly lower than other parts of the region. We've only received about 12% of the funds for this particular program. I want to ask again for your help in promoting this opportunity to your partners. Again, we didn't really get anyone from District 4 last year, so we really hope to change that.
Is it an open application or is there a time limit or like an application time?
I believe it's a rolling application because we do talk about how it's available year round, but we can get back to you if that is not correct. Is that
Right.
correct? Yeah, perfect.
Thanks.
To help showcase what these funds could be directed towards, the city of Milwaukee used these funds to remove and dispose of abandoned RVs throughout their community. They also addressed through this eligible usage of the dollars, they were able to address the public safety issue and dumping nuisance. So just to kind of highlight some of the creativity that these funds could be used for. We've also used these funds for programs like in Happy Valley, their large household item collection event in June. Multnomah Village's Business Association awarded funds to assist with their installation of several murals. And then a few other projects as well. But yeah, that is what I have here to highlight, and I'll go ahead and pass it back over to President Gonzalez.
Well, that covers what we wanted to present today. Things, but the counselor and I are happy to take any questions.
Perfect.
Any questions? Good. Counselor Falconer and then Counselor Schimmel.
I just thank you so much for all of the updates, and I just hope that we maybe this council can maybe encourage staff to really look into those grant opportunities. I'm particularly interested in the Housing Acceleration Fund. Seems like that's directly in line with a lot of the planning that we have to do over the next couple of years with housing capacity analysis and also HPS. And then this, regional refresh fund sounds, I can think of a whole lot of, ideas for using those $5,000 right here in Forest Grove. So I think we should definitely encourage staff to pursue those opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Schimmel.
I concur with Councilor Falconer. Thanks for just echo those, and thank you, Councilor Gonzalez, for your service in District 4 and the service you're already given as a president. And just welcome, Miles. I'm honored to serve with you, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Yeah, I just want to double down on these comments to staff, but also importantly to you, Council President Gonzalez. Overwhelming feeling of pride to have someone who went through Forest Grove schools, lived in this community, worked at Centro. There's like this optics that politicians are bad and that people do it for the wrong reasons. And, looking at you, I know that's incorrect. And I think you've been doing it for all the right reasons. And I continue to just feel very lucky that we are partners with you. And I'm excited to see all the things you're going to do for our region. So congratulations. And Miles, I hope that you enjoy working with us and that you find us to be a friendly council. I try not to speak for other people, but I think you have a team here that values partnerships and that is willing to work with you. So welcome aboard, and we're looking forward to continuing to do the work. So thanks, gentlemen. Okay, cool. Thanks. Next up, we have a presentation from the Forest Grove Cornelius Chamber of Commerce on a tourism update. So I will invite our chamber director, or no, maybe, well, both. Come on up, Amanda. Come up, Claudia. Hi, how are you?
Thank you for the accommodation. I know it says Claudia Yakos, but I'll be giving the presentation today.
Yeah, you're good. Thanks.
So good evening, Mayor Wenzel and Council. My name is Amanda Yakos. I'm the Chief Operations and Communications Operations Management for the Chamber of Commerce of Forest Grove and Cornelius, and I also see the day-to-day operations for the marketing aspect of Discover Forest Grove. Thank you again for the opportunity to share our vision for the next chapter of tourism in Forest Grove. So when people think about Forest Grove, we want them to think about a place worth discovering, a place worth spending time in, and a place they can't wait to come back to. So tonight, I'm excited to share how we're working together to make that vision a reality. Why tourism matters. Thank you. Slide, Mariah. When we talk about tourism, we're really talking about bringing new dollars into our community. Visitors spend money at our restaurants, wineries, our coffee shops, retail stores, hotels, attractions, local events. These dollars circulating through our economy. They support small businesses, they support jobs, they generate transient lodging tax revenue. Most importantly, they help create a vibrant downtown community that residents enjoy every day. And tourism isn't separate from economic development. Tourism is economic development. And the beauty of tourism is that we're inviting people to invest in Forest Grove simply by experiencing everything that we already have. Our vision is very simple. We want Forest Grove to become known as one of Oregon's most welcoming, authentic, and memorable small town destinations. So everything we do supports that vision. We want people to discover Forest Grove. We want to give them reasons to stay overnight instead of making this just a day trip or a 30-minute trip, something that they drive through and pass by. We want them to explore more than just one attraction. We want them to share their experiences with friends and family, and ultimately we want them to come back. The exciting part is that we're not starting from zero. We already have the pieces. We have one of the country's premier wine regions. We have McMenamins Grand Lodge, Pacific University, beautiful outdoor recreation, excellent restaurants, thriving downtown arts and culture, year-round events, and strong regional partnerships. Those pieces already exist. Our job is to connect them into one compelling story so visitors experience all of Forest Grove, not just one destination. So what exactly is our role? Yes, we'll manage the tourism website, we'll create the digital marketing, we'll be promoting the businesses, we'll develop visitor campaigns, but that's really just the beginning. Our real responsibility is connecting people, connecting businesses, and connecting experiences, connecting regional partners, and making it easy for visitors to understand why Forest Grove deserves more than just a quick stop. Everything we do aligns with the city's scope of work and focuses on increasing overnight visitation through coordinated destination marketing. So tourism is never accomplished by one organization. It takes collaboration. We're fortunate to already have strong relationships with University, Travel Oregon, Explore Tualatin Valley, our regional destination DMO, Travel Portland, our lodging partners, our wineries, our businesses, and our community organizations. When everyone tells the same story together, our message becomes much stronger than if we work independently. I think this slide really captures our entire strategy. If every visitor follows a journey, first they discover Forest Grove, then they plan, they visit. And hopefully they stay overnight. While they're here, they explore even more. And if we've done our job well, they return. Every website update, every itinerary, every partnership is designed to move visitors one step further through this journey pictured here. We're fortunate because Forest Grove offers experiences visitors truly cannot find anywhere else. Yes, we have wine country, but we also have America's largest premium sake brewery. No one in this region can say that except Forest Grove. A historic downtown, Pacific University, outstanding restaurants, arts and culture, McMinimans, cycling, retail, local events. These experiences become even stronger when they're connected together. Instead of asking someone to visit just one winery, we're inviting them to spend an entire weekend experiencing Forest Grove. This may be the most important shift in our strategy. Rather than promoting individual attractions, we'll market the complete visitor experiences. Think about a spring wine weekend or a sip and stay getaway, a university family weekend, holiday shopping, farm experiences, downtown dining. The goal isn't simply just attracting visitors. The goal is extending their stay, because one overnight visitor contributes significantly more to our local economy than someone who simply drives through for just an afternoon. Tourism shouldn't and isn't only happening during one season. Every season offers a new reason to visit Forest Grove. Spring brings wine, outdoor recreation. Summer offers concerts, cycling, family travel, and events like the Concours d'Elegance happening this weekend. Fall celebrates harvest and university activities. Winter highlights shopping, dining, arts, and holiday experiences. That creates year-round economic activity rather than concentrating everything into just one season. Our marketing strategy uses many tools working together. Our website, social media, photography, video, search engine optimization, digital advertising, video guides, public relations, regional partnerships. Each supports the other, creating a consistent story that reaches visitors wherever they're looking for travel inspiration. We also want to make sure we're accountable. Success shouldn't be based on opinion. It should be measurable. That's why we've established clear key performance indicators. We'll track website traffic, digital impressions, audience growth, content production, partnership engagement, photography, and video development. As we establish this baseline data during our first year, we'll continue refining these benchmarks so the city can clearly see both progress and return on investment. So when we step back and look at the opportunities, it's very exciting. The Grand Lodge concerts, Wine Country, Stewart State Park just right nearby, same with the Banks Vernonia Trail, Pacific University, regional festivals, Washington County events. These aren't separate opportunities, they're all connected opportunities. And our role is to help experience them together, encouraging longer stays and greater economic impact here in Forest Grove. I'd like to leave you just with this one final thought. So this contract means much more than just marketing. It's about building a destination. It's about supporting our businesses, strengthening our economy, increasing overnight stays, and helping more people discover what all of us already know, that Forest Grove is an incredible place. We have the opportunity to tell that story in a way that inspires people not to just visit, but to stay, to return, and to become lifelong ambassadors for our community. Thank you. I'm putting the floor to any questions that you guys may have.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Counselor Schimmel.
I'm excited to see this, manifest itself. I appreciate the intent to build out the metrics. It'll be really interesting to see how well various events and activities turn out. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this was a great presentation, Amanda. You did a really good job with it. Yeah, I think that you have the structures in place. I think you have some indicators. I think it's going to be, I'm excited. I think you've done a great job. So good job.
Excited to see what's to come.
Go ahead.
I'm going to follow up with you about Pacific University and several weekends that I know that are on the calendar that you may not be aware of yet, but would be really great times to sort of directly market to a specific group of people who I know will be coming. And there's usually groups of 30 to 40 of them around town, and they're looking for all the things that you've mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, I want to piggyback off that because I remember at the chambers, Chris, the tree lighting, right? And I think I've brought this up a few times. The basketball team had a game and they were like, where were all these people? So I think, it's not just like, that partnership with Pacific, I feel like it's really strong. And we want to also like support the students there. We want to support, like invite the community to go watch their things. And then also when families come and visit, this is a community. I think that's one of the things that makes Forest Grove so good, right? Is that we tend to rally around each other and we show up for one another. So I just agree with Councilor Falconer and just
That's
also
why I'm
want to
so
say that.
excited that it's back in local hands, since we have a great temperature check on everything going on, that we're able to really get a great pulse on everything, that we can get back, everything on the calendar.
Great.
Exciting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And our next presentation is from Washington County Housing Services, an update from Miss Jill Chen, who's the Assistant Director. And I'm sorry, I don't have your name on my agenda, so sorry for not introducing you.
Thank you so much. City Council members, really appreciate this opportunity. Good evening. For the record, I'm Jill Chen, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Deputy Director of the Housing Authority of Washington County, as well as the Assistant Director of the Department of Housing Services. With me is Lisa Varon, who's our Real Estate Division Manager. First of all, I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to come again and share with you this progress we've made in our Forest Grove Permanent Supportive Housing project. But before we do that, I want to first introduce some of our partners who are sitting right behind me, headed up by Transcending Hope, Dina Valdez. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and her team. They're our supportive services partner, and also I see Jonas there, and that's with Central Cultural. Just so pleased to have these folks as our partners, and I really appreciate the time today. So our agenda today is wanted to do a quick setting of the stage about the impact of the county investments in our housing and homeless services, then talk more about our project, the current timeline, our partners, and seek feedback from you all in terms of questions or how we could work with the community better. Next slide. A quick overview, and I'm so sorry, this is tiny words. This is a map of the impact that the county has made in terms of its investments in housing and homeless services. Much of this has been funded by what Juan Carlos mentioned was the Metro Affordable Housing Bonds, as well as the Supportive Housing Services measure. So you'll see there's, you can call it our housing and homeless assets that spread throughout the county. Much of this is in the process of being developed and or being constructed. The map is a little bit dated, and we will be updating it since a few more projects has come online. Slide. As you know, this is the project that is sitting at Jim's Auto Shop, and we are really pleased to come back and update you about the project. It's at 3127 Pacific Avenue. It will house 44 homes, studios, and 1 bedrooms for households exiting homelessness. The Housing Authority will remain the owner and developer of the project. And as mentioned, our key partners are Central Cottrell, Transcending Hope, Walsh Construction, Scott Edwards Architect. And Carol Oregon. No forwarding at this point. This site sits on the major corridor, commercial corridor, and provides strong access to transit, employment, community amenities, and planned-on services. A bit of history. Our housing authority started the work on the Forest Grove permanent supportive housing site by participating in the state, what is called the Permanent Supportive Housing Institute, almost about a year ago. This was to help us refine the project. As part of this process, the Housing Authority agreed with our community in Forest Grove and re-examined the needs of our population and focused on the site and the importance of what was identified as amenities and centrality of the site. And we moved it to this current location. We entered the purchase and sale agreement back in December of 2024. We have now purchased the site and are moving rapidly. You'll see that the Housing Authority Board back in February approved a $2.5 million pre-development loan for us to move this project forward and advance it. That's what we're funding ourselves right now with this. Most recently, in May, we were able to be awarded a 9% low-income housing tax credit from the state, plus a $4 million gap financing, plus rental assistance and supportive services subsidies for 45 households. This actually means we do not need to use our own SHS money at this point. So we're leveraging all the services we've already provided and trying to bring more resources into our community. Next slide, please. The development timeline. At this stage, we have completed much of our due diligence work and assembled our team. We're here to move next into areas of community engagement, design, and pre-construction. And I will now turn it over to my colleague, Lisa.
Thanks, Jill. Evening. With major funding sources in place, our development team has been assembled as well. So we've been doing RFPs and RFQs and building our partnerships with our architect, which is going to be Scott Edwards Architecture, our general contractor, Walsh Construction, our resident services provider, Central Cultural, case management provider, Transcending Hope, and our behavioral health partner and funder, Care Oregon. Really a great team that we've assembled, and we're excited to move forward. Our selected architect, Scott Edwards Architecture, brings a depth of experience that is well suited to this development. They've designed more than 1,900 units of affordable housing, including workforce, senior, transitional, and permanent supportive housing throughout the region. And they have a long history of working in Washington County. They also successfully partnered with Central Cultural on Casa Amparo, giving them direct experience working with our culturally specific service partners and in Forest Grove. Their team incorporates strong sustainability and community engagement practices, and the combination of expertise and values is what made them a strong fit and why we selected them as our architect. We've also selected our general contractor, which will be Walsh Construction. They have extensive experience building affordable and permanent housing throughout the region. In 2025 alone, they delivered 23 projects, including 8 PSH developments. They're known for high quality work, excellent communications, and a strong quality assurance and control program. They're also clear communicators, and they work with stakeholders. Their values, approach, and track record make them a strong partner for this project and its complexity. Slide. Oh, there we are. Okay. Early in this project, Hawk, Centro, CARE Oregon began working collaboratively to envision the project through the Permanent Supportive Housing Institute, which is sponsored by Oregon Housing and Community Services and the Corporation for Supportive Housing. For this development, Central Cultural will lead resident services, and we've recently added Transcending Hope to provide case management services. CARE Oregon will support integration into the behavioral health system. This multifaceted partnership creates a service model that is culturally responsive, coordinated, and grounded in experience working with permanent supportive housing residents. As this service structure is now in place, we're excited to have this team collaborate with Scott Edwards Architecture to design a community that will serve the city of Forest Grove and the residents who live there for years to come. So over the next 6 to 8 months, we see this project moving forward with community engagement, are working through our final funding approval with OHCS, executing MOUs with our service partners, and beginning schematic design. We're also looking to a building permit schedule, which has us submitting actually in the winter of 2027 with a summer 2027 issuance and a construction start in fall 2027. So we are moving fast. We're looking at about, I think we have about 14 months at this point to construction start. And so everybody is on board and ready to go. So one of the key reasons why we came here tonight to present to you and give you an update was to also take this opportunity to get input from City Council and from the community at large. And we have a couple of questions here. And we'd like to know what are some considerations that we should keep in mind as we move forward at this stage in the project? What suggestions do you have for collaboration and community engagement as we develop our community outreach strategy? And or do you have additional project questions? I'll go ahead and leave that open.
Great, thank you. Do you want to go ahead, Councilor Falconer?
I do have some questions about the sort of the what you're anticipating needing to do, and if you're considering or thinking that there would be any are you seeking any variances, for example, any like land use variances, any need to come before the before the planning commission or the city seeking variances because something in our code is preventing you from delivering as many units as you would like to? And before you answer that question, I think the last time we talked about this project together, I encouraged you to please let us know if in your pre-application, the design of this project, if there's anything keeping you from, one of the questions I always have with delivering this, this deeply, deeply needed housing in our community is why can't we do more? And so if there are things that the city controls, we don't control the money, we don't control a lot of things, but we do control a few things. We control our review process, we control our code, and if there are things that, maybe this project won't benefit from some changes, but another project, a few years down the road could learn, could benefit from what you all have learned through going through our process. I'd really appreciate hearing that. And I don't want you to feel like you're throwing anybody under the bus or holding us to the fire or anything like that. This to me is like a real opportunity for some real hard conversations about, hey, this is in our way. We could have delivered many more affordable units for this community if we had this.
Yes. Thank you for that question so much, Councilor. We could have developed much more units. We originally looked at this site for 60 units, not 45. We scaled it back because of the funding limitations from the state. Oregon Housing and Community Services could only give us $4 million as a maximum for any project under a 9% low-income housing tax credit. We also maxed out on all the tax credits under 9%. If we had delayed and waited right now, under the Oregon system currently, there is $1.58 billion worth of gap funding requesting money from the state across the whole state, not just in our community, in Forest Grove. So we scaled back, and you're right, if we were able to receive more tax credits and say got $6 million of gap, we could have done 60 units instead of 45. So we scaled back because we wanted to go out the door, get this done, and immediately start helping our community instead of waiting 5, 6, 7, 8 years. In answer to your question about pre-application and design and code, we are looking at some of those, and some of those variances may include things like balconies, back doors. We also know that I think code requires playgrounds. This is a community that will not have playgrounds. So there are some things we're going to be seeking variances for. But we would like to come all in with, Scott Edwards to sort of package all of it together and essentially work with Jesse and his team to make sure that we can sort of make it easier for both him and us in sort of expediting the process. Lisa, do you have more to add?
Yeah, I can add. So we have a schematic, but it was the schematic that we applied to the state with, and now we're going to go back and do a new schematic with SEA. And so this is going to be an opportunity to really take a deep dive into those specifics. But we do know permanent supportive housing is not a housing type where you want balconies. It can create challenges for that population. We also know that there are certain other requirements at the site that state law allows us to come back to the city and I think ask for 2 or 3 exceptions. So we kind of have in mind that balconies and maybe a few other pieces like the playground might be in that. But from there, we really want to start early with case management with your community development and planning team to really talk about where does it feel right to situate this on the site? Where does it feel right to, for where the open space is going to be for the community and how people enter and leave the property and all those things. So we're pretty early on, and I do think there will be opportunities where we'll be coming to the community for feedback and input, and to the city first, really, to get a sense of what's important, what we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about, how building this property in a commercial corridor, what's important, even though it's residential, what might be important for how that looks, all those kinds of things. So it's a little early. We have a short list of things that we know are going to be items that we might need exceptions for. But as we proceed, we absolutely can document and share that with the council.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Great. Thank you. Councilor Martinez.
So what I'm seeing is this is an exclusive community for a specific population, not an inclusive community, which I feel that's sad because it doesn't help people to integrate within the community at large. And so
I would say this is.
Could you speak up a little?
Sure.
She speaks very
Sorry
softly,
about
yeah.
that. It's intended for folks coming out of homelessness. So the people who will be coming into this building will be those that are referred through coordinated entry. So I know in our community, we have a number of low-income folks, but unless they're in coordinated entry, they are not going to be able to necessarily be referred in. Now, those folks who are in coordinated entry are already in the homeless system. So I'm not sure, total population. We are looking also for our partners, Transcending Hope and Central Cultural, for us to have the community integrated. So the residents in this particular building will be part of the larger community, not isolated, because frankly, they do need to live in this community and be part of the members.
Absolutely.
A big part of having such intensive services and a permanent supportive housing model where we have both resident services and case management is really this integration both as a community itself and cohesion and integration into the community at large. So resident services includes how do you go grocery shopping and going on a grocery shopping trip? Where's the senior center? Hey, there's free events. How do we go to those free events? How do we take the bus to the beach if we all want to go to the beach? This is really an opportunity for people who've been on the outside of organized society to reintegrate, and that is part of the mission of the entire building. And we, in this particular property, our goal is to create a community that's supporting each other in their reconnection to the broader community at large. And that's really the goal here. And I think you touched on something really important, which is that it is not going to be community unto itself. There isn't going to be a grocery store or a senior center or a library or a restaurant. Those things aren't going to be there. People are going to be going out into the community and really getting to experience and be a part of Forest Grove. And that's really what our services team is going to be there to support and to scaffold for this population.
Councillor Schimmel.
Well, congratulations on the progress so far, and I've had confidence in the team, project team you have. I've worked with several of them in the past, so I think they'll all help you accomplish what you're articulating about the integration with the community. Also, congratulations on the funding. It's great that we can secure outside funding to bolster housing here. And just looking ahead to the community engagement, there'll certainly be some demystifying, some people's perceptions of permanent supportive housing and the services provided there. Just one thing on the illustration is when you're speaking to the community, is speaking of reflecting on the perimeter of the property and the egress point, where not only the residents are accessing, getting to and from the property, but what the perimeter plan is in terms of the outlying properties. And then on the engagement piece, I'm a real fan of co-hosting with local agencies. So, for example, the partnering with the chamber on the business district engagement, working with discovering who the property management firm is for any outlying apartment, on engaging those communities, basically finding an already local trusted person. And then of course, Centro Cultural on the broader community engagement. They've already established themselves through the senior center, and I think have done a tremendous job of garnering positive community support. So those are just three examples for those particular areas.
And we will want to reach out to the community, especially as we start doing the charrettes. And Scott Edwards, as our architect, will be leading a lot of that in conjunction with the Housing Authority team. So stay tuned.
Great. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. It's exciting. Thank you. We're going to move on to item F, which is public hearings, ordinances, and resolutions. Before we begin, I want to check with our city recorder. There's not a public hearing with the first ordinance. Okay, cool.
Hearing was completed the first.
We already did it.
In the last first reading.
Okay, great. Thanks. Just making sure. With that, I would like to invite our senior planner, Dan Reardon, up for ordinance 2026-03. Good evening.
Mayor. Dan Reardon, senior planner. Pleasure to be here this evening. To any questions, or if council has any additional questions regarding
Any additional questions since the last meeting when I see none, or I hear none? You know, hands raised. Okay, so with that, I mean, we just move on. Is there a motion on the?
I move to approve ordinance 2026-03.
Second.
Thank you. Ordinance 2026-03 was moved by Counselor Martinez and seconded by Counselor Schimmel. Is there any discussion on this? I see and hear none. So will the city manager please read it by title only?
Ordinance 2026, I'm sorry. Ordinance 2026-03, amending the Forest Grove Comprehensive Plan map to remove the Forest Grove General Industrial Plan designation from territory to be removed from the Forest Grove Urban Planning Area, file number 31126 000006 PLNG.
Thank you. Will the city recorder please call for the vote?
Counselor Schimmel,
Yes.
Counselor Falconer,
Yes.
Counselor Martinez,
Yeah.
Counselor Marshall,
Yes.
Mayor Wenzel.
Yes, ordinance 2026-03 was approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a 5-0 vote. Thank you. Resolution 2026-32 is next on the agenda, and I'm going to ask our city manager, Jesse Vanderzanden, to give the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Before you this evening is Resolution 2026-32. It approves an intergovernmental agreement between the county and the city of Forest Grove to administer the Community Development Block Grant Program, or what we commonly refer to as the CDBG program. Every 3 years, the county has to recertify with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to administer the Community Development Block Grant Program. Currently, we are in a consortium of 11 other cities with Washington County, so they have to redo an IGA with all of their, they meaning Washington County has to redo an IGA with all of the 11 cities, and then once that consortium is re-upped essentially with Washington County, then they can recertify with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to administer the program. The resolution before you tonight approved before, just with different plan years. The plan years for this IGA is 2027 through 2039, with an option to extend from 2030 to 2032. And again, this just allows us to participate in the CDBG program and authorizes the county to administer it for us. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. Any questions? Seems pretty straightforward. I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we approve 2026-32.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Resolution 2026-32 was moved by Councilor Martinez and seconded by Councilor Falconer. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none. Resolution 2026-32 is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a 5-0 vote. Next up, we have our Assistant City Manager, Kim Ezel, with Resolution 2026-33. Go ahead. Sorry, I was going to say something else, but I'm good.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The resolution before you this evening would place a measure on the November 2026 ballot that asks electors if the city may issue general obligation bonds to finance a new police facility. As background, the current police facility was constructed in 1977. Since then, the police department has grown from 12 to 42 personnel, while the 12,120 square foot facility has remained the same size. A 2016 analysis found 34 deficiencies with the current facility, including inadequate space for processing and storing evidence, which can jeopardize cases, and the lack of a safe and private place to interview victims, which can result in sensitive information being overheard. In 2018, an alternatives analysis was conducted to evaluate whether to remodel, expand, or replace the current facility. The findings concluded that remodeling or expanding the existing building is impractical and more expensive than constructing a new facility. Based on these findings, McKenzie Architecture designed a new police facility that is about 45% larger than the current facility and corrects the deficiencies identified in the 2016 analysis. The construction of the new facility is estimated to cost about $29.5 million. At current interest rates, this averages to 69 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. For the average homeowner, the impact is about $193 per year or $17 per month. Pending a successful election outcome, construction of the new facility could begin in early 2028, with officers moving into the new facility in 2029. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none. What's the wish of the council?
I move that we pass resolution 2026-33.
Second.
Thank you. Resolution 2026-33 was moved by Counselor Schimmel and seconded by Counselor Martinez. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none. Resolution 2026-33 is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a vote of 5-0. We are now moving on to item G, which is council communications, and I'm going to begin with Counselor Faulkner.
Hey, unfortunately, this week I have to miss JWC and Chamber because I will be working and also flying out of town, but they both meet this week. So I will look forward to learning what I missed and reporting back next time.
When does Chamber meet? Is that next Monday?
It's the board retreat. It's on
Oh, that's right.
Wednesday, and it's an all day
thing. Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Don't worry about it. And I
It
don't
was
think
a
I can.
really great event last time. The chamber retreat was, full of ideas and information, and I'm really sad to miss it, but I'm sure I'll get the report.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the other item, I'm going to actually just share my presentations with Mariah, if that's okay, because I have the other item. This isn't a city liaison position, but I'm now serving as a commissioner for the LCDC, Land Conservation and Development Commission. I did have my first set of meetings last month, and there were a lot of really great presentations that I think that city staff and other counselors will find. I've kind of highlighted the ones that, obviously the packet is available online, but I warn you, it was 5,000 or more pages that I had to get through for my 2-day meeting. And so I'm only sending you like this much of the presentations that aren't online and available. But there, just to real quick, the topics that I thought you all would find very interesting and timely were about data centers, the Middle Housing Oregon Homes bills, the Housing Production Strategy Showcase, Housing Accountability and Production Office legislative reports. So I'll be sending those items to you.
Great. Thank you, Counselor. Next up is Counselor Marshall.
Parks and Rec meeting was canceled this month, so I have nothing to report.
Thank you. And Counselor Martinez.
I have nothing to report.
Counselor Schimmel.
CCE remains focused on the promotion of the police facility bond, as well as the open house planned in October. So more details on that to follow. And then the TV highway project won't meet again until September.
Great. Thank you. City Manager's report.
So a few things to report. The next big outreach event for the police facility is Barbecue with the Blue on Saturday, this coming Saturday, July 18th. That will be from 11 to 1 at Rogers Park. The National Night Out Bike Bonanza is scheduled for August 4th. That'll be in Lincoln Park from 6 to 8 p.m. So there'll be lots of fun for families and a bike wash, a bike safety course, and some prizes. The following evening, during the Farmers Market, which is Wednesday, August 5th, there will be police facility tours during the Farmers Market from 5 p.m. all the way until the end of the Farmers Market. So if you go to the Farmers Market and you want to look at the police facility, please stop by and take a tour. For the Civics Academy, the applications open on August 3rd, so a couple weeks from now, and classes begin on September 2nd. And then, as Councilor Schimmel mentioned, the community open house is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, October 27th. Let's see, a couple other things coming up. The Public Works Administrative Building remodel and expansion is scheduled to be completed by the end of this month. So we are a couple weeks ahead of schedule. If you've seen some construction on TV Highway, that next to just east of Quince, that's the Rose Grove Mid-Block Pedestrian Crossing. This is one of the projects that was included in the East TV Highway Safety Improvement Plan. It's one that the city has lobbied for, and ODOT is currently constructing that right now. It's a mid-block pedestrian crossing with a refuge island and sidewalk modifications, and what they have some called mast arms that have been completed. So that project is ongoing. The North Water Transmission Line, that's what we call the emergency water intertie. That connection was recently made. That's at over by the Neil Armstrong Middle School. So that connection was made, so everything went well on that. Some good news in terms of parking downtown. Kudos to Public Works and their crews. They did finish restriping the parking in the town center area, and we had mentioned to the council previously that we were looking at adding 16 additional spots, but we were actually able, through Greg and his staff, we're actually able to add 20 additional on-street parking spaces. So very happy about that. Additionally, we've installed some wayfinding signs that have been added to find the public off-street parking. So you'll see some new signage there. Those are all common and consistent signs. Couple grant applications. We have to go through a two-stage process for what's called the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant. That's a $20 million grant that we're applying for the water reservoir project. The first step in that is you have to do what's called a sub-application, and that sub-application has to be approved by FEMA to be able to go to the next step and actually apply for the grant. We have successfully submitted the sub-application, and it was accepted by FEMA, which means that we will now officially be able to apply for the grant itself. On a similar note, the application for the U.S. Department of Transportation Safe Streets for All, what they call the SS4A grant, was successfully submitted. That was for $14.76 million, and that was for TV Highway as well. And a couple updates about the library. The Friends of the Library had a record May book sale. They raised $6,900. And there's been a total of 1,362 signups so far for summer reading. So we are doing quite well there. And then the last update is the East Side Park is currently under construction. The concrete is being poured, and the playground equipment will arrive any day. So we are looking forward to completing that East Side Park this summer. So with that, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So the MMC, I was placed on the Homelessness and Public Health Subcommittee. So a small group of us met and identified priorities for the legislative session. And one of the main priority that I advocated for was substantial infrastructure funding, supporting housing production and land readiness, and a housing investment in road sewers to enable housing. I think that in a community our size and on the MMC, sometimes I think in a lot of these regional groups, like just really advocating for small communities is my job because other things get pushed to the front. And then add back transitional housing and sober living, rehabilitation, recovery services, workforce development. That's just the kind of tie up maybe a loose end. That was when the discussion about the alcohol revenue, and that Oregon currently has the largest alcohol deaths, and those taxes on alcohol should be related back to treatment. And then also supporting behavioral health units. So that will end up going back to the larger MMC group to make sure they're okay with it. But basically, we just try to divide into different legislative topics to give our priorities and then see if that works. Today, the WCCC met, that's Washington County Coordinating Committee. Just a few notes that the Council Creek Regional Trail, the timeline has been pushed out, but it did just recently get there was approval from some sort of, the draft amendment was received, and so there is movement. So now they're going to start that process. The RAISE grant does expire in December of 2028, so that's when the trail needs to be opened by. They identified some U Street median crossing in Forest Grove, and then also some maintenance. They did contract out. This might be like something Greg wants to know, Public Works, but supposedly they are working on, they contracted out for trail maintenance right now as they wait for construction to make sure vegetation and there's wildfire mitigation. So that was a big presentation, and I think it's nice to hear that there's finally some movement on that. And then the other one that will be interesting to us is the Reliancy transportation funding. How they're gonna adjust that vehicle fee adjustments is gonna be a phased-in approach of $10 every year for the next 3 years. So that's what the commission decided on. And then 60% goes to the county and 40% goes to the city, but that's based on population. So there could be fluctuations in how much the city receives based on our population. And then I just also wanted to say thank you to the Downtown Association. I attended the July 4th celebration, the fireworks celebration, and gave some welcoming remarks. And I think that the nonprofit did a really good job of bringing people back. It was warmly received by the community. The fireworks show lasted over 30 minutes. And so I know that that was a lot of work and probably by a few people who put that together. So I did want to publicly thank them, specifically Councilor Gustafson and her team of volunteers. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Oh, and just remember that we do not have a first meeting or second meeting in July or first meeting in August. So we're on our month recess for the summer. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, but I'm going to ask everyone to stay put because we have a work session. Okay, so meeting adjourned.